7. Psychic empathy, connecting with the emotions of others. Definition of psychic empathy. This aspect of feeling, perceiving, and tuning into the emotional and psychological states of other individuals is a particularly fascinating and complex field. This capacity is not limited to the cognitive understanding of the pain or joy of others, but consists in a visceral and immediate experience of these emotions, as if they were one's own. For example, a person with these abilities might walk into a room and immediately feel tension or happiness in the air, with no visible evidence of these emotional states. He may sense sadness or anguish in a person who appears calm and content. This feeling beyond is often accompanied by a sharpened intuition and a deep understanding of the needs and desires of others. Despite its intangible nature, this ability has very real effects. It can help bring you closer to others, increase mutual understanding, and create deeper connections. However, it can also be a source of stress and confusion, especially when the perceived emotions are intense or negative. Furthermore, it should be emphasized that psychic empathy is not just a human phenomenon. Some animals appear to possess this ability, as evidenced by different helping and comforting behaviors observed in different species. Fascinating as it is, psychic empathy is also a challenge. It requires the ability to handle a constant flow of emotional information, to distinguish between one's emotions and those of others, and to protect one's psyche from the potential effects of this sensitivity. In the next section, we'll explore these further by trying to figure out how to differentiate common empathy, a trait many of us possess, from psychic empathy, a capacity that goes beyond mere emotional understanding. This distinction will help us better understand the nature of psychic empathy and its implications for the way we relate to the world. Distinguish common empathy from psychic empathy. We will now delve into the concept of empathy, a term that often resonates in our daily interactions, to understand what distinguishes it from the more specific phenomenon that we have defined as psychic empathy. It's important to remember that while these two forms of empathy share some similarities, they differ in terms of intensity, scope, and implications. In human interactions, empathy is a fundamental ability. It is the ability to understand, cognitively or emotionally, what another person is feeling. For example, we may be able to imagine how we would feel if we lost a close relative or were promoted at work. This type of empathy is based on our ability to put ourselves in each other's shoes and imagine what they might be feeling. Psychic empathy, on the other hand, goes beyond mere understanding. It is a direct and visceral experience of the emotions of others, as if they were one's own. Using a similar example, a person with psychic empathy wouldn't just imagine how she would feel if she lost a relative or was promoted, rather, she would actually feel the pain of loss or the exhilaration of the promotion as if it were happening to her. For this reason, psychic empathy can be both a gift and a burden. It can allow for a deep and intimate understanding of others, but it can also lead to emotional overload, especially when the perceived emotions are intense or negative. It can also be difficult for people with psychic empathy to distinguish between their own emotions and those of others. It is also important to note that while empathy is a uniquely human trait, there is evidence to suggest the presence of empathy, and perhaps even psychic empathy, in animals. This brings us to the next topic, which will take a closer look at empathy as a transversal phenomenon in the animal kingdom. This fascinating aspect offers us further perspectives on psychic empathy and its ingrained presence in our living world. Empathy in animals. Entering the world of animals, one observes an interesting demonstration of empathy that goes beyond the borders of humanity. Animals display a variety of behaviors that indicate the ability to sense and respond to the emotions of other members of their group. However, it is important to note that research on this topic is still ongoing, with many aspects still to be explored. Starting with our domestic sphere, dogs are often cited for their evident emotional connection with human beings. Anyone who has had a dog can attest to their ability to sense human emotion and respond accordingly. Similarly, cats, horses, and a number of other pets exhibit similar behaviors. However, it's not just pets that demonstrate empathy. Chimpanzees, for example, have exhibited behaviors that indicate a form of empathy. These include comforting group members who are distressed or imitating play behaviors to pacify their mates. These phenomena raise a number of interesting questions. Do these animal behaviors represent a form of empathy as we understand it in humans? Or are they examples of instinctive and social behaviors that shouldn't be interpreted as evidence of actual empathy? And, more intriguingly, is it possible that some animals experience a phenomenon similar to psychic empathy? Regardless of the answers to these questions, examining empathy in animals reminds us that empathy is not a uniquely human phenomenon. It is a phenomenon that extends across species barriers, connecting us in profound and fundamental ways with the natural world around us. Nonetheless, empathy, especially psychic empathy, can be a challenging experience. Being able to feel the emotions of others can lead to emotional overload, especially if you are unable to adequately manage or control these perceptions. This brings us to the next section, which will explore strategies for managing the energies and emotions of others. Here, we'll delve into the techniques used to control and target empathy in a healthy and effective way. Manage the energies and emotions of others. Navigating the sea of other people's emotions can be challenging, but there are techniques for doing it effectively. An individual with psychic empathy can experience a wide range of feelings and moods, from the mildest to the most intense. In some circumstances, the experience can become overwhelming. That is why it is essential to learn how to manage these perceptions. A fundamental technique is self-awareness. The individual must learn to recognize his own emotions and distinguish them from those perceived by others. For example, if a person begins to feel sad after talking to a melancholy friend, he or she must recognize that the emotion may not be his or hers, but a projection from the friend. Once this awareness is achieved, the individual must learn to regulate his emotions. Techniques such as meditation or mindful breathing can help create distance between oneself and the emotions of others, allowing the individual to remain calm and centered. Another key strategy is setting emotional boundaries. This doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing other people's emotions, but rather learning to recognize when these emotions become excessive or harmful. For example, if empathy for a friend in distress leads to excessive stress or anxiety, you may need to step back and take time to recover. The practice of self-care is just as important. Healthy eating, adequate sleep, regular exercise, and moments of relaxation and recreation can help keep the mind and body in balance, making it easier to manage the emotional energies of others. However, even with these techniques, there are times when the emotions of others can become too intense. In these cases, it is imperative to learn how to protect your psyche. The next section will explore strategies for doing this, discussing shutting down or shielding techniques that can be used to block out external emotional influences when needed. These techniques can be especially helpful for highly empathic individuals, allowing them to maintain poise and serenity even in the most emotionally charged situations. Protect your psyche. Constant contact with the emotions of others can be exhilarating, but also exhausting. For individuals with psychic empathy, the distinction between one's own emotions and those of others can become blurred. Therefore, it is vitally important to take protective measures to preserve one's emotional stability. A crucial strategy is the creation of mental barriers, often called screens or shields. These can be visualized as a barrier of light, a wall, or any shape that the individual deems effective in repelling outside energies. It is essential to remember that these shields should not be used to completely block out the emotions of others, but to modulate and control access to these perceptions. Besides the construction of shields, grounding is another important technique. Through this practice, the individual learns to ground himself in the present, establishing a connection with the physical world which helps him maintain an emotional balance. Specific meditation techniques, such as visualizing roots extending from one's body into the ground, can help in this process. Self-care is another key element in protecting one's psyche. Adequate rest, healthy eating, exercise, and recreational activities can help restore energy balance and offer a break from outside influences. Finally, it is important to remember that you are not alone. Joining support groups, sharing your experiences with other empathic people, and seeking the help of an experienced counselor can be very helpful. Protecting one's psyche is a vital step in maintaining mental and physical health and continuing to use psychic empathy in a beneficial way. However, this phenomenon is by no means new. Psychic empathy has a long history, present in different cultures around the world. The next section will explore the historical and cultural manifestations of psychic empathy, illustrating how this ability has been interpreted and used over the centuries. Experiments and scientific studies. Over the years, science has tried to investigate the real existence of psychic empathy using a variety of experimental methods. Neuroscience, in particular, has made great strides in understanding how the brain perceives and manages the emotions of others. Studies on the activation of mirror neurons, brain cells that are activated both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing the same action, have helped explain the phenomenon of empathy from a neurological perspective. These studies suggest that empathy may be rooted in this mirror neuronal network. In parallel, psychology has sought to better understand psychic empathy through behavioral and experimental studies. Research has examined how empathetic people respond to a variety of emotional stimuli, providing valuable data on how we perceive and react to the emotions of others. Studies have shown that highly empathic people may have a more intense emotional response to these stimuli and may be more sensitive to the emotions of others. Research in clinical psychology has explored how psychic empathy can influence mental well-being. Some studies suggest that excessive empathy could be related to conditions such as depression and anxiety, while others highlight its role in promoting positive social relationships and increasing understanding between individuals. Importantly, despite these advances, science is still in the early stages of understanding psychic empathy. His study presents significant challenges, such as the difficulty of measuring something as inherently subjective as emotional experience. In the next section, we will explore the potential benefits and risks associated with psychic empathy in more detail, taking a deeper look at the implications of this unique ability. Benefits and harms of deep empathy. Carefully examining the implications of psychic empathy, it is possible to highlight a number of associated benefits and risks. On the one hand, the ability to connect deeply with the emotions of others can foster richer and deeper interpersonal understanding, help build close bonds, create a supportive environment, and foster compassion. For example, people with high psychic empathy are often sought after in helping professions, such as psychology, counseling, nursing, and social work, where understanding the emotions of others can be critical to successful work. On the other hand, there are also potential risks. The ability to intensely feel the emotions of others can lead to emotional overinvolvement, emotional exhaustion, or even burnout syndrome. Those who possess a high degree of psychic empathy may find themselves facing mental health issues such as anxiety or depression, as they can easily absorb the negative emotional states of the people around them. This can be especially problematic in highly stressful or traumatic environments. Another risk of psychic empathy is the difficulty of establishing emotional boundaries. Feeling the emotions of others as if they were their own can cause people to lose touch with their own feelings and needs, making it more difficult to establish a separate identity. Despite these risks, psychic empathy is a faculty that can be managed and developed in ways that maximize benefits and minimize negative effects. With practice and awareness, empathic individuals can learn to protect themselves, establish firm emotional boundaries, and use their empathy constructively. Moving on to the next section, we will focus on developing specific techniques and exercises to strengthen psychic empathy. We will explore a range of practices, from the simplest to the most complex, to help those who wish to deepen their ability to perceive the emotions of others and manage their emotional sensitivity. Exercises to strengthen psychic empathy. In managing and developing psychic empathy, practice is key. A series of exercises can be used to strengthen this ability and to learn how to manage it effectively. Let's start with meditation. The latter is a widely recognized method for increasing self-awareness and one's emotions. Through mindfulness techniques, the individual can learn to distinguish between their own feelings and those of others, a vital skill for psychic empaths. For example, the practice of the body scan helps focus attention on physical sensations, recognizing the impact that other people's emotions can have on the body. A second exercise is about learning grounding or anchoring. This practice involves techniques that help to stay connected with the here and now, stabilizing the individual and reducing the possibility of being overwhelmed by the emotions of others. Anchoring techniques may include focusing on your breathing or using your five senses to connect with your surroundings. Before saying goodbye, I want to remind you how important it is for us to hear your support. If you enjoyed this journey into psychic empathy, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click like. This will help us grow and continue to bring you more and more interesting content. And above all, it will allow you to stay up to date on new episodes. Thanks a lot and see you next time.